Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. The quarterback carousel continues. Still plenty of veterans out there. Todd McShay, draft analyst for The Ringer, on what he believes is the thought process for the Browns general manager, Andrew Berry, heading into the draft and regarding quarterbacks.
Kevin Stefanski, who he's worked with in the past. Putting myself in Andrew Berry, the general manager for the Cleveland Browns, shoes, and trying to figure out what are his options? Where is he with the salary cap? Where is he in terms of what his options are at that quarterback position? Where is this roster now, which is pretty good? Mm-hmm. What's missing? Quarterback. And then also make a couple calls to people who have been or are in that seat as a general manager in the NFL, so that I can take myself out of that global thinking for a minute of, well, he doesn't have the arm strength and he's not a top 3 prospect. He could be falling. I talked to a couple people from different organizations that think he doesn't want to go there. And talking to them about, okay, if you're in charge of the Browns, given their circumstances and how handcuffed they are, they're more handcuffed than any other organization by one contract, Deshaun Watson. Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So I did all those things. For Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski specifically, you believe in what you're doing, right? You've built a good roster. You believe in yourself as a coach and the history you've had and the winning you've done. You also know that you need to win at some point real soon to save your job. Drafting at number 2, having the season they had, stacking those consecutively is not going to cut it.
So the Browns really need to get a quarterback on a rookie contract, is what he's saying. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, NFL national reporter, talking about the latest that he's hearing relative to the quarterback carousel, Shedeur Sanders, and the Browns.
And then the Giants have to wait for everybody, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the Giants, you know, I do know that Russell Wilson has looked at the Giants as a viable option for a while now, even dating back to the Super Bowl or around the end of the season. So he must have seen some of those dominoes coming. So I do think that will eventually be the play. If the money's right, you know, I think he still looks at himself as a valuable starter, and that costs money. I'm curious how far teams are willing to go just because of the musical chairs he's played the last 3 years with different organizations at quarterback. So, you know, he's got a cap where you have to work it out financially, and these teams will probably be looking more for like a lower end bridge deal. And I don't know if he's willing to accept that at this stage, given all that he's done and all the Pro Bowls that he's made and the Super Bowl pedigree. So that complicates things a little bit. But my sense is, you know, if Rodgers goes to Pittsburgh, Russell Wilson slides right into that Giants spot unless things get crazy.
But can you see the Giants taking Shedeur Sanders? Could you see the Giants actually try? I don't know if Tennessee's going to actually take Cam Ward. They sound like they are, but I don't believe anything until it happens. But can you see the Giants being aggressive with either one of these quarterbacks?
Yes. And even before the Aaron Rodgers talk, when they were going for Matthew Stafford, like they spent a month on trying to get Matthew Stafford and put together big financial packages, and they were sort of left at the altar. But the sense coming out of the combine was if they strike out on Stafford, they're going to go draft. They're going to go heavy there with that 3rd pick, maybe try to trade up. I still think that's a possibility. If you get Rodgers or even Wilson to a lesser extent like that, at least frees you up to not have to do that if you don't want to give up too much. But some of that was predicated on Tennessee wanting to move back. It does seem like now, again, a lot can happen with the draft. I won't make sweeping determinations, but from what I've gathered, they seem pretty comfortable with Cam Ward. Like there's some momentum there with other teams I've talked to league-wide that they feel like they're just going to sit there and take Ward. I know the interviews with Ward have gone well. They feel comfortable with like the mistakes he has made on the field. They feel like he's done a good job of explaining those and can be coached and correct them. And he's got the obvious upside on top of that. So if you equal all that out, you sense a little momentum for the Titans to sit put. That could complicate things for the Giants if they're comfortable with Shedeur at 3 or even moving up to 2. Is that too rich for them? I think they're weighing all those things, but in the short term, they've got to figure this out and at least get a solution bird in hand with a veteran free agent.
But can you see the Browns taking Shedeur Sanders?
So the Browns have been probably the most unpredictable in all this. Like They don't have a lot of money to spend. I do think Kirk Cousins could be in play for them because of the familiarity with Kevin Stefanski, but there's not. Atlanta really is just, they don't want to move him. And then if they do move him, they're going to want somebody to pay a good amount of that offset money with the $37 million they owe him. So that complicates things for the Browns because they're paying Deshaun Watson. They're looking at guys like Carson Wentz too as sort of contingency plans. So they've been all over the map, really. You know, they acquired Kenny Pickett last week. So they've been tough to figure out a little bit. I do know that they like Shedeur. To what extent, if they're willing to pick him 2 overall, I cannot say. I do know there's some love there for Shedeur Sanders and sort of his computer brain to be able to, you know, feel out the game mentally. Like they have some respect for what Shedeur can do in that area, maybe more than some teams.
So it's interesting. Browns like Shedeur Sanders without question. Chris Sims, former NFL quarterback, what he sees in Cam Ward, who he has the top quarterback in this draft.
I love the kid. I'd take him number 1. He's the number 1 quarterback in the draft. He's the man. He's a franchise quarterback. And I think that's a big reason you haven't heard the Titans involved in any conversation with any veteran quarterback or anything, because I think they probably saw what I saw. They turned it on. They saw all the other quarterbacks, and they went, oh, damn, this guy's freaking good. We're going to take him at number 1. And that's the end of that story.
So you think the Titans are going to take Cam Ward?
I think so. I think he's too good to pass up. I wouldn't pass him up. And you know what's on top of that? You want to read the name I put on top of this? And I'm not going to take total credit here, right? I don't always write people he reminds me of.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of this just because of the way he's so strong in the pocket. But what's that name right there? Can you read that name?
Steve McNair.
Exactly. Where did he play?
Tennessee Titans.
Exactly right.
Steve McNair, Cam Ward. Interesting comp. Hadn't heard that one before. Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, with what he believes the Browns' chances are of finding a quarterback for the franchise quarterback in this draft.
The odds are you're not going to find your franchise quarterback in this draft. So it doesn't mean the whole draft's a wash. You do have some great players you could pick there, or you could trade down, collect picks, stock up, proceed to build your team until the timing is right where you could find the guy. Now, definitely have to take a quarterback, but to say you have to take it at number 2 is just wrong.
And I would absolutely agree with that. That would be forcing the pick at 2. All right. Juan Thornhill, released by the Browns, getting tricky with his announcement of where he's playing next year. Yeah, he's going to the Steelers. Browns fans probably wondering how many times it took him to throw that hat and catch the hat, given that he didn't do much for the Browns. Guardians, a little over a week away from the beginning of the season. They'll start in Kansas City against the Royals, and the rotation has looked pretty good. Tanner Bybee got the start yesterday against the Reds, and he's been great this spring. Last night, continued to look like an ace against the Reds. 6 innings pitched, no earned runs, just 1 hit, and 4 strikeouts. Bybee continues to pitch well. Chris Antonetti, president of baseball operations, talked about making all the pieces fit in the pitching staff, including the rotation and the relief corps, and guys that can actually do both.
Ongoing. Yeah, if you've been in the meetings for the last 2 days, we've had a lot of conversations about not only that, about the roster composition, but who's going to fill which roles. And as you said, we have pitchers that are not only competing for rotation spots, but they can be competing for bullpen spots. And the other thing that we have to layer on is that we have to make sure that, we know we're not only going to use 5 or 6 starters over the course of the year, we're going to need a number of starting pitchers. So we have to be thoughtful of what are the implications of shifting a starter to a major league bullpen role and not having that pitcher stay stretched out in a rotation in the minor leagues, because we have to have the ability to adapt and be resilient if something happens to a major league starter, to have a group of quality guys from AAA that are stretched out, ready to contribute. So there's a lot of different factors at play that makes it really hard to work through. But at some point, we'll have to make some of those decisions.
It was just 20 years ago where you guys only used 6 starters.
Yeah, sign me up for that again. It's hard to conceive that that's true.
Yeah, only a couple of years ago, just 6 starters. Now, the Guardians, the good news is they have a lot of options, and they're going to need them without question. Cavs out on the West Coast getting ready for a game tonight against the L.A. Clippers that will start the final West Coast trip of this season. Stephen A. Smith, ESPN, a believer in the Cavs. We've heard it on the show last couple of weeks. Here's who he wants in the NBA Finals this year.
Tell me what your wish list is.
Cleveland versus the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James, Luka Doncic in the NBA Finals. And the reason I mentioned LeBron James is LeBron James going to Cleveland, trying to prevent Cleveland from capturing an NBA championship. Imagine the superstar that is Donovan Mitchell, because he is one. With Allen, with Mobley, with the acquisition of DeAndre Hunter, with Darius Garland, even with Max Strus showing up, okay? Look at these brothers in Cleveland, the best record in basketball, how they've been playing, and you make it past Boston to the NBA Finals, and now you've got LeBron James coming to Cleveland, Ohio, coming back home to try to prevent them from capturing a championship. To me, when you talk about something that's box office, here's the reason why I will put that above LA Boston. I don't believe the Lakers have a chance against the Boston Celtics. I think the Boston Celtics will run them out of the building. Cleveland is a different matter because they haven't been there. They haven't proven it yet, right? So if you got LeBron and his experience and his greatness coupled with Luka going up against Cleveland, I think that would be epic.
And again, Cavs fans will take anybody that means the Cavs are in the NBA Finals. They'll take the Lakers. They'll take the Thunder. Cavs in the Finals. Cavs fans sign up for that right now. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter, up first on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you. And you, sir, what's your name? Where are you from?
Tom Burrell from Lexington, Ohio.
I'm playing Powerball. I use auto pick when I pick my numbers. Do I have better, worse, or the same odds?
Same odds. I'd say better. I still think worse. Same odds.
He's got it. It's the same. Auto pick, numbers you pick, same odds. Either way, he has it. He has it, folks. He already knows. You can learn more by going to ohiolottery.com/knowtheodds.
We turn our attention to the Browns. Browns have talked with Russell Wilson, Adam Schefter from ESPN, on what he's hearing relative to the Russell Wilson saga across the NFL.
Schefter, you mentioned Russell Wilson's name. Now, presumably, he's waiting behind Aaron Rodgers when it comes to the Steelers and the Giants' pursuit of who will be quarterback one going into this upcoming season. But he did take a visit, Russ being, to the Cleveland Browns. And so I'm curious, what is the holdup when it comes to the Cleveland Browns and Russell Wilson being able to form a pack moving forward? Is it the Browns or is it Russ waiting on one of those other opportunities?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of both. The Browns are limited financially in what they could do. You know, and I don't expect Russell Wilson to sign Sam Darnold's contract or anything like that, but the Browns already have a lot of money invested in Deshaun Watson and probably would not be able to offer a similar contract to the Giants or Steelers, I'm guessing. And the Giants and Steelers also have varying levels of interest in Russell Wilson. And so Cleveland might be a really intriguing scenario, and maybe he gets there eventually. But it sounds like the Giants and Steelers for the time being are a bit more plausible. And, again, everybody's got options. Everybody's got options. And, you know, as interested as the Giants and Steelers might be in Aaron Rodgers, like I said, for all we know, one of them decides, you know what, we're not waiting around anymore. Let's go get Russell Wilson done here. Like, that could happen too. I don't think those teams are at that point right now. Plus, it's March, 18th today?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what really is the time deadline here? I know everybody wants an answer, and I know the Steelers would like an answer, and the Giants would like an answer, and Russell. But does it matter if that answer comes today or tomorrow or next week or even on April 1st? No, it does not. So there's no real time urgency involved. There's the idea that everybody would like it done, but it doesn't have to get done right now. And so there's nothing that's pushing it
And
today.
so Mary Kay, let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, long global view of Russell Wilson. I know you kind of wrote a thing about the Browns and the veteran quarterback pursuit. Take us through kind of the Browns thinking about the veteran quarterback market.
Well, I did write this a couple of days ago that money is an object for them with Russell Wilson because, of course, they have a $37 million cap charge for Deshaun Watson. So when they look at that room globally, they really have to have two other guys in there or three other guys in there that are not going to add up to too much money. So I could see them paying $4 million, $6 million for a quarterback, but maybe not going much more than that. And then maybe adding in some incentives. If it's a Russ, I think you'd have to do something like that. If it's a Joe Flacco, then maybe you could get away with a 1 year, $5-6 million contract, something like that. But I still do think that they are interested in adding this more experienced veteran, someone who could possibly start the season if they need him to. Having said that, I still think that they're probably looking quarterback at number 2 overall. And if you're taking your quarterback that high, there's a very, very good chance you're going to start him very early on in the season, maybe even the opener. So I think that's one reason why they're kind of hesitant on breaking the bank or going out and signing a veteran quarterback that's going to cost a significant amount of money. So Russ is still in the mix for them. Joe Flacco is still in the mix for them. And it sort of depends on right now what Aaron Rodgers decides to do.
Well, Jameis Winston is taking a visit today with the Giants. What does that mean, if anything, for the Browns?
Well, it is significant because it means that the Giants might not end up with Russell Wilson. And if they don't, then it increases the likelihood that he could end up here. They might just decide that Jameis is the man for them. And so if Jameis signs there, it leaves Russell available for the Cleveland Browns. Of course, he still has the Steelers that are interested in him as well if they don't land Aaron Rodgers. So, and the other thing about Jameis Winston is that the Browns really are not in the mix for him. They're not in the hunt for him. Once he got benched last year after his 12th interception, they were kind of done. 12 interceptions in 7 games, and it was just too much for them. So I think that they're ready to turn the page on that. Having said that, however, I don't think that in a situation like this, you can absolutely 100% rule anything out, because what if Joe ends up signing with the Giants and Russ goes back to the Steelers and Aaron goes to the Vikings? Then you're going to be back out in that veteran quarterback market again. So I do think that you have to leave all of your options open, but I don't think that Jameis right now is on the front burner.
Kirk Cousins still on the Falcons roster after the $10 million bonus, so he did get that. They did pay him that. Do you think the Browns at all try to find a way to trade for Kirk Cousins if the Falcons will eat enough of the contract, or is that not something you see happening?
I think they were very interested in Kirk Cousins when they thought that they could get him at the veteran minimum of $1.25 million if he got released by the Falcons. In the event that you have to start giving up draft capital, I think they would be much less interested in that possibility because, once again, they probably will end up taking a quarterback at number 2 overall and planning to start him fairly early on in the season. So I would probably be surprised unless they just have decided we're going to go with Kirk and we are going to start him for the first half of the season or 3/4 of the season or whatever the case may be, and we are willing to give up this draft capital. I'm not really feeling that right now, just knowing how they kind of think a little bit and what the philosophy has been. I really see them kind of going younger and then in terms of just the future and then trying to pay a very moderate price for a quarterback. And the Falcons would be looking for something to offset that $37.5 million. So I don't know if that's going to be in the Browns' price range from a draft capital standpoint.
All right, as we wrap up the talk about veteran quarterbacks, we've heard Carson Wentz. Is that a name that has been thought of, do you think, with the Browns front office?
Well, I think they've had to at least contemplate everyone that's out there and available. They were never really going to be in the market for a Sam Darnold, a Geno Smith, and Aaron Rodgers who were going to break the bank, basically. But when you start to get down to the level of quarterbacks that weren't going to cost all that much money, then I think you do have to at least consider maybe they will be interested in some of those guys. Now, I haven't heard that Carson Wentz is on the front burner or a realistic possibility at this point. But once again, they might have to pivot depending on what happens with this next round of quarterbacks once these dominoes start to fall. So can't rule anything out, but really not 100% feeling that one right now either.
Since last we talked to you, Myles Garrett signed the big contract extension. At the time was the highest paid non-quarterback. Has been passed by Jamar Chase. He met with the media. What was your biggest takeaway from the gathering with Myles Garrett after he signed the extension to stay here?
You know, I didn't have a huge takeaway. I don't think there was some smoking gun or some big revelation on why he changed his mind. I think it's pretty obvious that he probably realized that he was getting an amazing offer from the Cleveland Browns. Why not take that money when who knows who else has that kind of money to spend, plus the draft capital to give up for you. I never thought the market for that was going to be that great. I can't name very many teams that would have been able to do that deal. So I think he probably realized, maybe his agent asked around a little bit and discovered that it wasn't going to be as easy to make that deal on both sides of it as maybe he thought there was going to be. And then I think, as I've mentioned before, I think Jimmy Haslam not taking the meeting really showed him that they meant serious business about not trading him. They sort of locked arms and presented that united front. And I think he realized that he wasn't going anywhere.
You also wrote an article just about kind of his approach to getting the fans back on his side. And you know, his thing is he plans on going out and playing well. Take us through the article. And, you know, I've said all along, fans will be upset until he has that first 3-sack game. You know, a strip sack fumble does a lot to heal wounds.
Absolutely. And, you know, I asked him a few times how he planned on getting back into the good graces of the fans and did he need to make amends. And he basically said, I will let my play do the talking. So that's how he plans on doing it, by going out, elevating his game, not because of this situation, but because he tries to do that every single year, take it up another notch. So he plans on just being a better version of himself in every way and winning the fans back that way. And as you mentioned, I think the fans will climb back on board once he's out there helping the Cleveland Browns win football games.
And, you know, we've said this all along, and I think you said it on the show. There is not a universe in which the Browns are not a better team with Myles Garrett on it.
Well, that's true. I mean, that, you know, he is arguably the best defensive player in the NFL, even though he's 29, he's heading into his year 30 year. You know, I still think that it would be very, very difficult to find him, even if you made a trade and you acquired 2 first-round picks for him. Those 2 first-round picks might be pretty hard-pressed to add up to one Myles Garrett, unless, of course, you ended up with some kind of a quarterback out of that deal that ended up taking you to the promised land. But other than that, I think it would have been hard to find that kind of value in 2 first-round picks, especially 2 later first-round picks, if you were, in fact, going to send him to a contender.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you and you. If an Ohio Lottery scratch-off game has 1 in 4 odds, that means if I were to buy 4 tickets in a row, I'm guaranteed to be a winner. True or false?
I'm going to say true. Oh, that's false.
You're right, it's false. The jackpot for the Mega Millions is at its highest it's ever been before. I now have worse odds. True or false?
True. False.
False? That is exactly right. You can learn more by going to ohiolottery.com/knowtheodds.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave. How you doing today, man? Love the show. Just have a question. What's the word on Nick Chubb? I know he's still out there and nobody's signed him. I love Nick Chubb as a running back. I love him as a human being in the city of Cleveland, and I hope we bring him back. Just want to know if you've heard anything on Chubb, if we're going to re-sign him. Because I read something where Myles Garrett said he's going to re-sign, but they need to re-sign Nick Chubb. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm just curious what the Browns are going to do. Are they going to bring him back? Just want to hear your thoughts. Go Browns.
So, Mary Kay, have you heard anything relative to Nick Chubb? We get couple of these a week. Everybody wants to know what's up with Nick Chubb.
Fan favorite, that's for sure. I get so many questions about Nick Chubb. And here's the situation with Nick right now, and this is the way that it's always sort of been. The Browns let him hit the free agent market. It was never on the front burner for them to re-sign him. They will let him go out and see if he can find a situation for himself that might even be better than what he could find here. Make himself a little bit more money than maybe they would be willing to pay him, and also maybe get some more playing time. I think they're going to draft a running back in this very rich class, and I think they will pair that running back with Jerome Ford, and I think they'll use that running back as sort of the workhorse back or share the load kind of a back. In the event they do that, then they have to decide if they would have any work for Nick Chubb. They don't want Nick Chubb sitting around doing nothing if he wants to be on a football team this year, which of course we know he does. So there is a world in which he can come back, but it has to be right for both sides. The Browns have to have a role for him. He has to want to come back in that role and at the price they're willing to pay him. So I think it's something that they can revisit over the next few weeks, maybe even longer than that there's no sense of urgency. And if he does find another opportunity, I don't necessarily think that that they would stop him from doing that.
So defense with Myles Garrett back on it looks pretty good, but this is an area, you look at the skill positions, and they need some help here. You know, Kenny Pickett is the lone quarterback. You got Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong. You have Jerry Jeudy, who had the breakout season. Young guys, Cedric Tillman, David Bell. David Njoku, when he's been healthy, is pretty good. But when you look at that, it's clear they need some playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. And Andrew Berry is usually does things that make sense. This draft, it would make sense to get some playmakers.
Absolutely, 100%, especially if you are going to be throwing a rookie quarterback out there. You want to give him all the weapons that you possibly can. So I'm probably going to be drafting a really good receiver, a tight end, a running back. I'm adding to that offensive pile and, just trying to support your rookie quarterback or whoever your QB1 is going to be as much as you possibly can. They need to get more explosive. They need to get in the end zone. If they don't think that they need another Pro Bowl caliber receiver, then I don't know what they're looking at. I just really do 100% believe. Yes, Cedric Tillman is very good. He's coming along, but if he gets one more concussion and has to sit out another 4, 5, 6 games, then you're going to be hurting there. So I'm bringing in another really good receiver wherever I can get him. If I have to trade for him, if I have to sign one in free agency, whatever you have to do, or if you have to draft one, whatever you have to do, I think you need another really good receiver to go with Jerry Jeudy.
So Todd McShay from The Ringer, former ESPN draft analyst, assessing how Andrew Berry and the Browns solve that quarterback issue that they have.
They don't have the money to sign a top-tier guy. They weren't in on Stafford. This is not a pluck, pay, and play situation for them. And that's not changing in 2026. So as I'm putting myself in Andrew Berry's shoes, I'm saying, organizationally, what's our way out of purgatory? They're in purgatory because of Deshaun Watson. It's only to draft and get a quarterback on a rookie contract. It truly is. These two things are true, okay? Hear me. And Berry has to be thinking these things. One, they can't expect to be drafting this high again for a while. They're too good. That roster's too good, okay? And if they are, as I said, Berry and Stefanski are very likely out of jobs. Number two, because of the Watson deal, you don't have the cap space to make it a big ticket signing, as I just said. So it ain't next year in the draft for a quarterback, or else you're out of a job probably. And it's not going to be this year or next year signing a big name guy who can come in and solve it all. So I'm saying all this to reiterate Cleveland's best chance at winning short and long term is to strike gold with this number 2 pick.
And Mary Kay, that's kind of laid out very logically, and it's the same thing that you've been saying since the beginning of the offseason.
If I'm not mistaken, I thought Todd McShay said just maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I thought he said the Browns are not taking a quarterback at number 2 overall.
I think
I'm pretty
combine.
sure
I think it was at the combine is when
right,
that
at
came
the
out.
combine?
Yeah. Yep.
So here we are 2 weeks later, maybe I guess 2 weeks later or something like that, maybe almost 3 weeks later. And now he's saying that the Browns are taking a quarterback at number 2 overall. So it's just so funny how
But he told you how he arrived at it, and it's pretty well. That's kind of what we've been saying. So he's starting to see
but nothing has changed in the last 3 weeks.
Correct.
Nothing has changed. So those parameters, those financial constraints were there 3 weeks ago, and the same set of circumstances were there 3 weeks ago. So, you kind of have to think that they're going quarterback at number 2 overall. And now that they haven't done anything in free agency to get a starting bridge yet, there's no sense of urgency to do that. It makes me believe even more that they're going number 2 quarterback. And it just seems like Cam Ward is going number 1. That leaves me with a Shedeur at number 2.
So I know you had an interesting idea that's kind of the equivalent of a sledgehammer to cure the quarterback ills. Take us through that and kind of the thought behind it.
Yeah, I guess I ruffled a few feathers with my crazy idea on the internet a little bit. But that's what draft season is all about. I mean, go big or go home, right? So here's my idea. And it is take Shedeur at number 2, but then come back, trade up into the first round, late into the first round, and take quarterback Tyler Shough. He had an amazing Senior Bowl. He's a big guy. He's got a phenomenal arm, and there's something to him. And if you end up not needing him, but you develop him and he turns into something really good, then you can get a draft pick for him. So when you have these kinds of assets, this kind of draft capital, why not utilize it on the best quarterback in the NFL draft and take a chance? And yes, you do need a bunch of other things. Maybe you'd rather have a pass rusher there. Maybe you'd rather have a receiver or a tight end or a running back with that pick. But they do have, I think 10. Yeah, they've got 10 picks left in this draft after sending the one to Philly along with Dorian Thompson-Robinson for Kenny Pickett. They've got 10 picks left. If you're worth your salt in the personnel department, you can fill those holes with other pieces. And of course, you'd probably trade some of those picks potentially to move up to get this quarterback that I'm talking about. But that way you're covered. Either if Shedeur doesn't work out, then you've got Tyler. And if both of them work out, then you have a really, really amazing problem. So if he's there late and you have a chance to grab him, I would do that 7 days out of the week.
All right. Any chances at all in your mind that the Browns trade back from 2?
I suppose there is a chance that they could do that. They do like other quarterbacks in this draft. And if they like someone else equally as well as they like Shedeur, then I could see them possibly doing that. I've been trying not to overthink this whole thing. We've been thinking all along that it's going to be Shedeur Sanders probably. And of course, when I say this, I say it meaning that Cam Ward has already gone number 1 to the Titans. That's what it seems like is going to happen. So therefore, I'm going Shedeur available to the Browns at number 2. And I think they just don't overthink it themselves, and they go with the next best quarterback on the board in that moment.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I. Going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Some more draft questions. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter. From the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, couple things for you today, brother. In the draft, I'm not too keen on these quarterbacks this year. How far could we trade back and still get like Abdul Carter? That's what I'm wanting. And any inside info on the quarterback situation, or is everything still a secret from us? All right, Dave, love you, brother. You be good, and you and the family be safe.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mary Kay, if the Browns are looking at Abdul Carter and like him that much, they probably should just take him at number 2 and not get terribly fancy and try to trade back.
Well, once again, I'm sure that they really like Abdul Carter. I'm sure that they really like Travis Hunter. But I think this is a draft in which you really kind of do need to get that quarterback. And I don't think that you can wait until the second round to do it. I don't think that the guy that you like is going to be there. I think at least 3 of them are going to go in the first round. And who knows, maybe even 4. So I'm not really thinking Abdul Carter at number 2, and I'm not even thinking Travis Hunter at number 2 at this point. I still think that you can fill in those pieces and parts in other ways through trades, free agency, but this is a quarterback year. It's really obvious they need one. They have a high pick, and again, I'm not overthinking it. I hope they don't either. They need to take that quarterback at number 2.
So this is kind of interesting as well. It's the first time in the modern draft era, the common draft era they refer to it, that all 32 teams have their first-round pick. So it kind of goes to show you, I think, the value of first-round picks and developing talent is on the increase. There used to be a time where you traded first-round picks and you got crazy. And, again, first year where all 32 teams own their first-round pick.
Well, that might also be because this is not generally considered a great draft for first-round players. There have been reports that some teams only have got like 15 guys with a first-round grade. I don't know how the Browns feel about it, but maybe that is why we're seeing this right now. Maybe that's why we're seeing the Titans hanging on to the number 1 pick. We just don't know yet for sure, but that is a very interesting statistic.
So earlier we kind of talked a little bit about draft analyst Todd McShay kind of arriving at the fact the Browns were going to take number 2, a quarterback at number 2. Here is what he thinks about Shedeur Sanders and the fit with the Browns.
Is Shedeur an elite prospect?
No.
Would Shedeur have been a top 4 or 5 quarterback taken last year?
No.
But if I'm Barry, here's how I see it. And this is the difference when I say globally versus each situation and organization individually. If I'm Andrew Barry, and this is the most important thing I'm going to say all day, my greatest asset in this whole mess is my head coach. Stefanski is my greatest asset. Why?
Okay.
Because Stefanski has a proven track record of getting the most out of pocket passing quarterbacks with limited mobility.
Okay.
Sound familiar?
Yeah. Listen.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
Shedeur's skill set is strikingly similar to a handful of quarterbacks that Stefanski's had won a lot of games, not just like a lot of games with in the past, including Case Keenum, won 11 games with the Vikings. Stefanski was a quarterback coach in 2017. Kirk Cousins. Vikings team won 10 games under Stefanski with Cousins as OC in 2019. Most recently, late career Joe Flacco, still a big arm, but not the arm he had in Baltimore.
Elite Joe Flacco, yeah.
And can't move at all.
So again, Mary Kay, what he's saying is Shedeur Sanders fits with what Kevin Stefanski has had success with a quarterback, which, yes, can't argue with that.
No, you can't argue with that, but I don't like that as an argument for why you would be taking Shedeur Sanders at number 2 overall. That's not a sound argument for taking a player. You're not looking for a quarterback to fit your coach's philosophy. You're looking for the best quarterback in the NFL draft. Whatever his skill set is, you go and make that work. The Ravens didn't go and decide, hey, let's find a coach that can figure out how to do something with Lamar necessarily. They They took Lamar and they built their offense around him. And that's what you have to do. So there's all this talk about fit, fit, fit. Okay, well, if it just so happens that the player who lands to you at number 2 is also a fit for your current coach's scheme, then that's beautiful. But don't do it because of that. I mean, who knows? Things change in the NFL. What if in 2 years you decide you want to go in another direction? Then you're going to be looking at a quarterback who was drafted to fit with the guy that maybe you aren't sure about anymore. I don't see that happening, but you absolutely never know. It's not the way to draft, and I'm quite frankly getting a little tired of hearing that narrative because it's just not a sound way to do business.
What is the reason the Browns? You've said quarterback, and I think you're on Shedeur Sanders if he's there. What's the reason they should take him? Do you think?
If he's the best quarterback in the draft that's available to you at number 2, that's the only reason to do it. If Jalen Milroe was the best quarterback in the draft at number 2, then you would take him there, even though he's a facsimile of Lamar Jackson, and you would build your offense around him, and you would figure that out, even if nobody has ever coached him before in your building, although Tommy Rees has. And I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that that is how you have to approach it. You're not looking for the fit with your coach. That's short-sighted, and it's just not the way that you would ever go about this. You go out there and you find the quarterback that you think is going to nail it and rock it in the NFL, and then you figure it out from there.
All right, before I let you go, is there any chance that the Browns trade up to number 1 and think, man, we got to go get Cam Ward? Or do you not see that happening either?
You know, it just seems like more and more the Titans are intent on taking him. If he's that good, if he's as good as everyone seems to be saying, why wouldn't they just stay there and take him themselves? What are fans and season ticket holders in Tennessee going to say if they trade away from a guy that turns out to be one of very few franchise quarterbacks in this draft? Why would you do that? So I think more so than anything, that's what's going to happen there, that they're going to take him himself. If for some reason they start to want to trade that pick, then I would for sure pick up the phone and make the phone call if you think he is the best quarterback in this draft.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com as always. Appreciate the time. Great stuff. Thanks very much, Mary Kay.
Thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Always insightful and extensive Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com joins us. Film breakdown, video analysis of some of the free agents the Browns have added to the roster. That's straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Time for a film breakdown, video analysis of the free agents the Browns have brought in. Whenever we do that, we welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. So, Lance, they re-signed Devin Bush with the linebacking core being what it is. That's important. But let's focus on the new guys that have come in. And the one that grabs plenty of attention is the quarterback, Kenny Pickett.
I'll be honest with you. Kenny Pickett's got a lot more. When you look at his tape, he's got a lot more in his tank than people showing. If you go back to his last year, so I watched his last year at Pitt. He's got a lot of talent. Problem is he's been in systems that haven't been really good for him. This system should be pretty good for him. If you take a look at these clips, you're going to see that he is, first one you're going to see here, he does a really nice job of being in the pocket, delivering a very accurate football. He throws a very good deep ball. He's got to have, now what they do here, what I really like, is that they're going to change the launch point. They're going to sprint him out, and they're going to change the launch point, it's a very easy high-low smash read. And then they're going to run a little play action. This is a play the Browns actually run where they're going to run levels and they're going to take that top level and they're going to go the opposite way with it. So I think this play action scheme, the run game, Kenny Pickett's as when you think about a quarterback you can win with but not win because of, Kenny Pickett's that guy. But he's got a lot of talent. And if you're talking about a guy, I'm not sure if he's a starter, but he's a guy who's got a really good arm. He processes information. He'd be a really good guy to have in that room. He'd be a great guy to help. I don't know if he's the bridge quarterback, but he's a good guy to have in that room if he happens to be the third guy. I like Kenny Pickett. I want to see what Kevin Stefanski does with him. Stefanski has had good success with these quarterbacks who are system-based guys. Pickett's a system-based guy.
Yeah, and to your point, he's started 25 games in the NFL. He's 15-10. Didn't really end well with the Steelers. But again, you saw a lot of what he did at Pitt is what Kevin Stefanski is going to ask him to do with the Browns.
Well, yeah, and he can process information at high level. So if you think about when Stefanski goes with heavy personnel, 13 or 12 personnel, and they like to split those guys out. Well, if the Browns get a couple tight ends, that's a matchup personnel group that Kevin really likes. So he likes to get in that group and then find a matchup because that defense is going to have in run personnel. So I think Kenny Pickett, he can process information very, very well. Again, he doesn't have elite arm talent. He's not elite probably at anything, but he's not terrible at anything either. So I think in the right system, get his footwork right, rely on the run game, minimize those deep shots so he's not having to use, throw the deep shots when they're there, but don't press, don't, force them. I think he's a guy that can have some success. I think this is the best system. This is his best chance for sure.
You look over on the line. The Browns sign a tackle, not a sexy name necessarily. Cornelius Lucas. What do you see when you look at the tape of Lucas?
Well, I'm a big Lucas fan, and when you look at these cuts, you're going to see he does a really nice job with his size of walling people off. So you're going to see the first one is just a run game where he's going to outside zone. He's just going to get his body in the way. 6'8", 330 pounds. So he's a guy that can do that. Then you're going to see he has really good feet on contact, really good feet running his feet when he gets contact. Really, this is off play action. This is kind of a play action look the Browns would run. So he does a good job in the pocket. He does a good job in the run game. He's an upgrade for me. He's an upgrade for Hudson because he's so good in pass protection. And the Browns really need pass protection. Now, in this run game, I've told it before, this is a physical run game, but the tackles don't have to be maulers. Those guards and center do because they pull, and they're the focal point on those double teams. The tackles got to be big. They got to get in the way. They got to use their bodies right, and they got to pass protect. And this guy can pass protect. He's really, really good. I enjoyed watching him. Didn't know a lot about him and got to watch a lot of tape on him. This is a really, really solid pickup. Kind of fills a hole that the Browns have at that tackle spot.
So again, you mentioned swing tackle. So he's more of the James Hudson rather than replacing Jack Conklin or DeJuan Jones on the other side. So we're going to flip to the defensive side of the ball, and it's kind of interesting. You re-sign Myles Garrett. They go out and sign Joe Tryon Shoyinka, and that's a guy, used to be just Joe Tryon from Washington, and it's a guy we were talking about with the Browns when the draft happened, and he ended up going to Tampa Bay. What do you see from Tryon Shoyinka?
Well, he's a guy who's really, really long. So he's a guy I really like on film. You're right. I liked him when he came out of Washington. So when you look at these clips, you're going to see his length. He's 6'5", he's 260. He plays all over the place. And you're going to see his ability to get inside. He uses his hands very well. He's a 5 technique who's going to be really good. They move him down inside, which is something that the Browns are going to want to do in terms of they like to move those defensive line guys around and find matchups. And you're going to see his closing speed. He can really run in space. Then you're going to see him here. He's going to do a good job with his hands, swim move, and get to the ball carrier. Now, part of his success was also part of his failure, I believe, with the Buccaneers. The problem is he played so many positions. He only played about 50% of the snaps. And when you only play 50% of the snaps and you play multiple positions, that means you're not getting a ton of reps or you're not mastering your craft at a certain position. With the Browns, I could be wrong, but I see him as an opposite pass rusher of Myles Garrett. And when you get that means you're going to get a one-on-one, which is what he will need. but he's also going to get to work on just playing the 5 technique end away from Myles Garrett. And if he can do that, he's a pretty special talent. He's got long arms. He uses them very well. He's got a good pass rush plan. He plays with a really good motor. From all, trying to do some research on him, he seems like a really good teammate. He works really hard. So this is a really good pickup. This is a high reward, low risk, high reward pickup because of his length and because I think he's going to be really good when he's playing one position and he gets to work at that one position.
Yeah, and you heard him say he's thrilled to be out of that 3-4 outside linebacker down to a 4-3 edge with his hand in the dirt. The other one, this was an interesting pickup, Malik Collins, inside guy, defensive tackle from the 49ers. What do you see with him, and how do you think he fits with what the Browns want to do?
Well, I was a big Dalvin Tomlinson fan. So when they lost Dalvin Tomlinson, he's a guy who doesn't get much credit because he's really boring. But you're going to see a guy who he's a little better upside in terms of his feet in a small area. He's got really strong hands, great feet. He's got a great first step. He does a great job of closing to the football. He's a really good pass rusher. He's probably not as stout in the run game as Dalvin Tomlinson, but this is a really good scheme fit for the Browns and Schwartz about being that gap penetrator. Now, I still think the Browns need to get a big, heavy guy who can just play on first and second down. But this is a guy who he's really good against the run, but he's kind of a guy who kind of fits that. He's going to pass rush and kind of run into the run game because this is a guy who likes to get in the gap and go. But this is a guy with a lot of career sacks. He's played a ton of games. He's a 9-year vet. He's played in multiple schemes. He can play the 3. He can, once again, he's formation flexible, but really good upgrade in terms of what he can do in the pass rush game.
Sounds like a guy that they can send Michael Hall Jr. This is a guy that has some plans and some similarities to you.
Well, and Michael Hall Jr. is a guy that I didn't have very high in terms of his ability to stop the run coming out of state. He was probably the best pass rusher though as a defensive tackle coming out in last year's class, or one of them. And that what he had to learn to take on the double teams, which he will as he becomes a pro. But they need a guy, I still think they need a guy who can come in there and anchor that defensive line, who's kind of boring, just a big, heavy guy that takes up multiple blockers. But this is a good scheme fit, especially on third down. I'm interested to see what they do with Alex Wright. Are they going to move Myles down inside a little bit more? But they got some pieces, and Jim Schwartz likes to have a lot of guys down there in the defensive line.
Lance Roslin from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I can step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break, talk a little bit more about the Browns roster and the draft. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Lance Roslin from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Todd McShay, draft analyst from The Ringer, on how he believes the Browns view their roster and their position in the upcoming draft.
You believe in what you're doing, and if we have time and a few years to build this thing, and we get the quarterback and we can insert it. We got Myles Garrett now locked down. We brought in Jerry Jeudy. We got Denzel at cornerback, Denzel Ward. Like, we've got pieces that are hard to get in this league, but we need a minute. We need a minute. Give us a little bit of time. The problem is, if we're picking here at 2 again and have a chance to draft one of those top quarterbacks, it's probably going to be somebody else making those decisions and probably going to be somebody else coaching those players, right? So how do you solve the crisis? They have a crisis at the quarterback position. And whether it was ownership forced it upon them, however it worked out, they're stuck with this situation. Deshaun Watson was the worst contract given to an individual maybe in the history of sports. Right?
Yeah, it's not hyperbole. I think that's
it truly isn't. So how do we manage with the handcuffs off? What's our best path, right? They know they've got a roster good enough to win a lot of games in 2025. And probably for the next 2 seasons because of those guys I told you. They just need solid quarterback play. They don't need elite quarterback play. They don't. They need solid quarterback play. They did not get that from Deshaun Watson. That's what happened last year.
Lance, I think, again, I think that analysis is spot on of what the Browns roster is and what they need.
Well, I'm a big Todd McShay fan. I think he does a great job in terms of, like, he's kind of real, but he's not over the top, neither positive or negative. He just kind of tells it like it is. And what I see in the Browns is he's absolutely right. They can't wait around. They don't have – so the one thing they don't have time. They got to figure this out right now or those guys won't be around, and we know how that's how the NFL works. However, if you like a guy – if you like if a quarterback's not high on your list, then you go get one of those game changers, Carter, Hunter, Graham. You get one of these guys that are really game changers on the defensive side of the ball, and then you get that veteran quarterback if you can. Now, the thing is, I think there's a couple quarterbacks. For me, Kirk Cousins makes complete sense. You draft Kirk Cousins, then you maybe get a quarterback in the later rounds that you think you can develop. Then you have a chance to win games next year. With a rookie quarterback, maybe that you're not super high on, that could be a challenge. So I think they have to get a veteran quarterback, whether it be a guy who's going to come in and lead the team or a guy who's going to come in and kind of guide the young guy. It depends. Now, there's some game changers up top. Abdul Carter's a game changer, but there's a lot of good players in this draft at certain positions and positions that the Browns have need in. So I think he's spot on. The Browns roster, there's elite players at a lot of levels. They have to get quarterbacks they can win with, not quarterbacks they win because of. And there's a lot of guys out there that I think that can do that. And I think Kirk Cousins is the guy for me that makes sense, even though it looks like he's not going to be available, at least early on.
All right. They would have to trade for him, and you would assume that they would have to have the Falcons eat some of that money. So we'll see. This is draft analyst Lance Zierlein's mock draft. Now, Lance is from NFL.com, and he is the guy that writes all of the draft comps and draft analysis of different players that you read on NFL.com after the Combine. He has Abdul Carter going 1 to the Titans and Travis Hunter going 2 to the Browns. Hunter can come in, start at wide receiver or cornerback right away, have a big impact at either position for the Browns. Lance, they need playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. You look at it, and we showed a graphic earlier in the show, and we showed it yesterday. It's Kenny Pickett, it's Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong at the running back position, and then it's Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, David Bell, and at wide receiver and David Njoku. You need probably a quarterback and 2, maybe even 3 guys to threaten the defense with the ball in your hand. What are your thoughts just about Hunter?
Well, I'm a huge Hunter fan. I think he actually have Mason Graham as my number 1 guy in the draft this year. The guy I like to break it down the mess, but Hunter, Graham, and Abdul Carter are 3 guys that are going to be difference makers. And it's funny because I think Hunter can be he's the first guy in a long time, and I think could be a dominating guy on both sides of the ball. It'll be interesting to see how they create touches for him if he's a corner. The idea of him being a corner opposite of Denzel Ward has to be very exciting as well. So create touches for him. Now, there's other guys, if they go a different route, there's other guys, the Luther Burdens. There's some guys that will be available on day 2 that fit their need, the slot receiver. They have that big outside number 1 in Jerry Jeudy, and they also have some guys on their roster that they like. So they need to find a space touch guy in the slot, and there's some Luther Burden. Emeka Buka might be around at 33. If he is, that would be automatic. I would turn that in before the second day even starts. So there's some guys out there, but you're right. They need guys that can create touches. They need to improve their tight end position again. That needs to get younger. That needs to get more explosive, especially since Stefanski's going back to calling plays. So there are some holes on this roster. There's some high-end level guys at the top, but they need to get some depth at some certain positions. Obviously, playmaker is one of them, probably the most important. I agree with you on that.
So this was interesting. I was a guy that always thought when I looked at Travis Hunter, he looked kind of thin, maybe a little lean. Wide receiver comparison, and it's a pretty good one. So Travis Hunter is the exact same size as Chad Johnson, later known as Chad Ochocinco. 6'1", $185 for Hunter, 6'1", $188 for Chad Johnson. So that eliminates some of my concern. Can Travis Hunter take the pounding in the NFL? Because I thought he was, to be honest with you, I thought he was going to come in under a $180. I thought he'd come in about 168, 172, something like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's some guys, linebackers when they blitz, receivers when they're getting up. There's some guys that play skinny, and they avoid big hits. And I got the chance to watch a lot of Travis Hunter over the last couple weeks, and that guy avoids getting killed. And it's amazing because he's not afraid of the ball. He goes and gets it, but he has such spatial awareness, such body control, both sides of the football. That's one of my major concerns with him as a defender is he's not afraid of contact. He's not a prima donna whatsoever. He will stick his nose in there. And we know with Denzel Ward, that's not always good as a corner. So he's a guy, he is. He's long. Not only is he 6'1", but he plays longer than that, especially if those 50-50 contested balls downfield. He has great acceleration. He's an elite talent. He's a 5-star guy. Obviously went to Jackson State with Deion and then went to Colorado. But he's a guy who his talent is through the roof. And he's a guy you don't worry about his weight per se because he plays skinny and just avoids those big hits with his spatial awareness. It's pretty uncanny when you watch it on film.
All right, so what areas, if you're Andrew Berry, do you address in the first 3 rounds? So I think it's 4 picks. I keep coming back. That defense, I know you need an edge rusher, but, man, I need a wide receiver. I need a running back. I need a quarterback. What do you think they need to do with the first 4 picks in this draft? First 3 rounds, they have 4 picks in it.
Well, I think they got to, first of all, they got to address the quarterback situation, whatever it is, right? So let's say if they're drafting, then I would go Sanders at 2. Then it immediately got to address that guy who can get the ball in space. For me, that would be Luther Burden, maybe Emeka Mbuka. I would be shocked if he's around, but if he was, him and Burden would be great choices. Space guys, can play multiple positions, touch guys, get the ball in space. Then a guy like who just has impressed me so much, a guy like Mike Green, opposite of Myles Garrett, he might be a good call. There's a couple offensive linemen that will probably make it to the second round. So depending on that, and how do they think of DeJuan Jones, and do they think that their latest pickup on the offensive line is enough? So that'll be interesting. They need help at linebacker. Jeffrey Bassa out of Oregon, he'll probably be around day 3 even. But there's a guy that I'm really high on in terms of scheme fit. He's an ultimate hybrid linebacker, 230, can run, cover, do everything that Jim Schwartz wants him to do. And then they got to address the tight end position as well, right? So Warren, if you're going early, but then you have guys like Harold Fannin, Luke Lachey, Loveland out of Michigan. They need to upgrade that position, especially if they're going with those tight ends and 13 personnel that can also split out. So they first of all have to identify what are they doing on offense, what are they, they know what they're doing on defense, but offensively they need to identify what they're doing. And if they're going to be in personnel groups that require tight ends, they got to get a couple tight ends as well. So it'll be interesting in the route they go. And you're right. The good thing about the running back position, there's a ton. A kid like Devin Neal out of Kansas, he'll be around day 3 probably, and he's super talented. So they just got to get I think you said it best. Whoever they get, they got to offensively, they got to get guys who can make plays in space without everything having to be blocked perfect.
All right, before I let you go, give me the name of a sleeper, an offensive player that's a sleeper. I know you watch a bunch of tape, so you're falling in love with somebody. Give me a guy that's 3rd, 4th round that you think could be there that you've kind of fallen in love with here when you're doing your research.
All right, so there's an offensive guy, Xavier Restrepo. Now they're saying 3rd round. I've heard a bunch of different stuff because of his height. There's a guy who does not wow you, so his pro day won't be very good. But there's just a guy who's just a really good receiver. He's a guy. The other guy is, I would say, is Jalen Travis. I'm pretty boring, so I like big guys with great upside. Jalen Travis is a lineman out of Iowa State. He's 6'8". He's 340. He played at Princeton, so he's really intelligent. He went to Iowa State. Everything that he does poorly, he's only going to get better because he's just learning how to play against high-level competition. So there's the kind of that DeJuan Jones, maybe a guy you can get in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. But a guy that no one talks about is Xavier Restrepo. And that guy is the all-time leading receiver at Miami and a guy that just gets open. And then you look at him at the Senior Bowl, he kind of gives you that Cooper Kupp vibe where he's not the fastest, he's not the most sudden, but he just gets open. Some guys are just good football players. So I think Restrepo, if he's around late day 2 into day 3, he's a guy you got to look at because he just gets open, makes plays, and catches the football.
Lance Roslin, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Lance Roslin, make sure you check him out, cleveland.com. Always really insightful film breakdown, video analysis. We will have more with him later this week. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.